Hello, welcome to this edition of Digital Badge Academy's webcast. I'm Jim Daniels, your co-host, here along with David Leaser, fellow co-host, who's going to introduce our very special guest today. David,
Yeah,
over to you.
well, we're lucky to have Jennifer Oddo with us, and Jennifer, we go back a long way. Jennifer was at the really in the earliest stages of when we started to develop the whole concept of new collar at IBM, and that really became really a global challenge to the existing systems to say, you know what, maybe there are better and faster ways to develop the workforce of the future. And so Jennifer was one of those leaders at IBM. Then she went to Youngstown State and became a leader there as a vice president at Youngstown. And now she has her own practice where she's teaching other higher education institutions and enterprises and community colleges, basically everybody, how to implement this new way of working. So thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, Jim and David, thank you so much. Always a great honor to be surrounded by you guys and the brilliant work that you're doing that really ties in to all new collar talent strategies. And as you mentioned, my name's Jennifer Oddo. For those of you out in the land who have not come across my work, but I found a new collar talent with a mission really to help industry and higher education innovate at speed and scale on skills and workforce transformation that really is at the genesis of creating opportunity and access for everyone to participate in quality education and jobs, right? We know our current workforce challenges are being exacerbated by one, the shift in demographics, from the mass exodus of the baby boomers to what a lot of people may not realize is we don't have enough 18-year-olds coming into the workforce as we did in the past. And that kind of ties back to that 2008 recession. So we don't even have 18-year-olds coming into the workforce. Secondly, we have a diminished trust in the U.S. education system. The cost, the value, the relevancy is really being challenged in new ways. And then thirdly, we have the speed of technological advancement and automation, artificial intelligence, and really the digitization of everything that's really making for a trifecta of challenges for the workforce and education systems. So, as you mentioned, David, before launching New Collar Talent, I served as a vice president of workforce education and innovation at Youngstown State University. It is a regional urban institution that is really in a community that has seen some hard times through the decline of the steel industry, the decline of the automotive industry. But YSU's former president, Jim Tressel, recognized that higher education had to really think and act differently to sustain and hopefully grow the regional workforce with what he called kind of a start and stack model for education. So, leveraging his vision, we established a new division to support the skills that weren't really being taught in the traditional degree pathways. So, think of robotics, automation, data science, advanced telecommunications like broadband and 5G. And we incorporated digital badging standards, practices, and programs. And those initiatives, in the course of 3 years since our launch, we issued over 14,000 credentials to over 8,000 individuals. So, but as you mentioned, my passion really, David and Jim, for alternative skills-based education and career pathways started during my tenure at IBM, where I was tapped to be on the team to launch then IBM CEO Ginny Rometty's global platform on new collar talent. So new collar talent was introduced in 2016 as a new workforce concept to address the changing workforce needs of industry, and with a focus on skills, not just degrees. We knew that a lot of the traditional blue collar jobs of yesterday now require more than a high school diploma, but yet a lot of the white collar jobs of yesterday no longer require an advanced degree for entry. So new collar jobs may not require that advanced degree for entry, but rather short-term training, stackable industry credential, digital badges, and other work-based learning like apprenticeships. So while many new collar jobs have emerged in professions such as application developer, cybersecurity, networking, data science, even functional jobs like accounting, marketing, human resources, and sales. So there is really a acceleration of these skills-based transformations happening across all industry sectors and all industry functions. But again, in this era of AI and digital transformation, this new collar workforce is as we're seeing, is really emerged as one of the most powerful labor market movements today, with that renewed focus on skills-based training and hiring, right? We recognize, as we've been working on the future of work, that, the workplace, the workers, the skills, and the technologies are evolving at such a rapid pace that the traditional workforce and education systems are being challenged in new ways to become agile, resilient, and even more inclusive. So this transformation, paired with, again, this tight labor market that we're currently experiencing, is only increasing the pressures of industry and higher education. So the future of work is really going to be redefined by new ways of thinking, seeing, and acting beyond the status quo, to create a future of work where everybody has equitable access and opportunity, education, and quality jobs. The future of work is here, and AI has only accelerated the need for companies and higher education system to respond at speed and scale.
You where do you start with something like this? I mean, do you start with the employers? I mean, because there's obviously the need is, the final mile is really the employers and the job. Or do you start with higher education? And, so where do you start with the practice you're working on right now?
It all begins and ends with the employers.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of their engagement and their alignment and their innovative thinking is going to be the only way where we move the needle to really create a robust pipeline of workers in this future economy. One of the first steps that employers could really start looking at is assessing their job posting requirements for skills, not just degrees, especially for those new collar jobs that we already know that you don't need an advanced degree for entry. We know that this is also one of the proven first line of defenses that, we used at IBM. We really started stripping away around those degree requirements. We've then seen companies like Google, Intel, here in Ohio, KeyBank is another one, Bosch, Aon, even General Motors, really start this skills-based transformation. But it's not an action or an activity. It's a change in culture. And that change in culture really has to start from the top and work its way down. Many of these companies have already begun their cultural transformation and removing those degree requirements. And if we've seen from the research from companies like organizations like Burning Glass, the Harvard Future of Work, that removing those degree requirements is really helping to elevate social impact by creating a more robust and diverse talent pipeline.
I think you bring up something really important there because, I think it was Burning Glass that came out with that report that says, yeah, all these companies are removing the college degree, but they're still looking at the college degree in the HR area. And, when we think about it, there are people, policies, processes, and tools, right? And the people part of it, I think, is the hard part, the OCM part of it. I think most people underestimate, like you said, if you don't have the executive sponsorship, and you don't have the organizational change to make this happen. And I think we saw that many, many times in the enterprise space, that if you don't have a senior sponsor to get something done, and you don't have the OCM to get people on board, it just doesn't happen.
Well, and I would add to that in a lot of cases, maybe most cases, employers just aren't sure how to go about it. They want to do it. They're just not sure how to get started.
You're absolutely right. And I think if we go back to the work we did at IBM, and even, I led a lot of the industry work at IBM with companies like Microsoft, Bosch, Sony. And it has to start small. And that's where, Jim, to your point, a lot of companies do get stuck. And how do I start this? And you can't create a global hiring initiative. You've got to start small and understand the nuances. And IBM was a great example. We started with apprenticeships. It was very programmatic. It was very specific. Candidates coming into that program were very, coming from our marginalized populations, coming without degrees. But we set up a pilot that kind of let us play a little bit outside the traditional hiring rules, if you will, while keeping in compliance with hiring rules, but it allowed us a little bit more flexibility to set up a dedicated program, because you have to start at a programmatic level before you can scale it to a globalized operational level. And one of the ways we started doing that, and this is how we lead with new collar talent with the work that we do with all of our clients, we start with user-centered outcomes. Creating training for the sake of training is a fail-fast strategy in any skills-based transformation. So really, what starts right stays right. And building these skills-based transformation programs, first of all, starts with understanding the users and their needs, right? Most people who are doing training are doing it for two reasons: to get a job or to advance in a job, right? That's really, the ultimate, there has to be an outcome generated. So understanding those user needs first and foremost. Number two, using data to support and inform those decisions. Just because AI is on the hot topic right now doesn't mean that's going to be relevant for your company at the moment. But get under the research, do the data, and make those informed decisions. And the third thing companies can do to start is create a sustainable system to achieve and track outcomes. Digital badging systems, that's where we started at YSU, because we knew, number one, it was going to help us elevate the promotion of the programs, help us track the skills that we were being created, but also track the outcomes that we were creating through the skills-based training programs. And David, as you know, digital badging, as you mentioned early, was a key strategy that IBM deployed to really understand their organizational skills matrix. That was the key weapon that we used to really start a skills-based transformation. If you don't understand the data, you don't understand the skills of your employees, you're not going to know how and what you need.
Right.
Yeah, the utility of digital badges is something that I know back in that day that we really focused on. And, there's the face value of what a badge provides, right? Oh, it's recognition for what somebody has done. It makes them feel good, motivates them, drives engagement. But then there's so much other value that extends from that utility in terms of how you can use that data. And I think that is really where the secret sauce was in terms of IBM's program. But you talked about in skills-based transformation initiatives starting small. It was no different like with, the badging program at IBM. It started with 7 activities combined, had a total of 30 badges. That's where it started. It eventually, over time, grew into over 200, almost 230 different badging initiatives scattered across the global ecosystem there, for a total of, it hovered and varied, but between 2,500 and 3,000 different badges that could be earned, depending on, what part of the business.
But what really took it off, I think, though, and I think that, one of the things because I hear people saying, oh, skills-based training, skills-based hiring is not taking off. And this whole idea of, getting rid of the college degrees is not taking off. I really do think it requires that level of executive sponsorship. Even with the badge program at IBM, it was the SVP of HR that said, I'm all in. I want everybody to do that. With New Collar, it was, the CEO saying, I'm all in, and I want to make this happen. But I think then at that level, I think we had that mindset of change that some companies don't have. And how do you get past that? You work with enterprises, you work with these higher education groups. How do you convince them that this is, obviously there's skill shortages. They see that the world is changing and they know that a lot of jobs don't require it. They know the college system is under pressure and all this other stuff. But what do you do to get them to say, okay, I'm all in?
Well, I think it's a great question, but I think it's the wrong question we're asking.
Yeah.
It's not about how do we change the thinking and mindset, because I have been sitting, I've just recently led 2 design thinking workshops on workforce transformation. And the number one thing we're hearing from the HR leaders in particular, they don't have the capacity. They want to do this. They understand the importance of it, but they are under increased pressures as HR leaders to maintain status quo, whether it's, finding new pipelines, keeping retention, all the different things that they're managing.
Limited staff, they have cuts and everything
It
else.
is. So I truly believe that HR leaders understand the importance, and Johnny Taylor and his team at SHRM have done a tremendous job at helping to shift that culture. However, these organizations need systems and processes, and even companies like the Digital Badge Academy or other companies who can come in and support that transformation. it makes me sad to think that these HR leaders feel like they have to be alone on their journey when there is this robust ecosystem of experts out there who can
Yeah.
help them on their transformational journey.
I think you're spot on there because we've seen that, right? We've seen clients who you could tell they were just overwhelmed and they felt like to get a badging program, a high impact badging program off the ground in place in production was just a monumental task. And ultimately, it doesn't have to be, right? Again, you go back, you start smaller and you get everything operationalized and you get the right kind of governance and framework in place, something that's repeatable and not overwhelming to manage and administer. And then you just replicate that and your program can scale and grow without all of the administrative minutia and overhead growing along with it, right?
Right.
I mean,
Now,
that's,
and
yeah.
a great example, Jim, at IBM, when we decided to launch apprenticeship programs, we started with one occupation,
Mhm.
5 apprenticeship hires, and me as the dedicated resource
Yeah.
in a global company.
Yeah.
Staffing, right? I mean, really.
And we had such resounding success and excitement with the hiring managers that within 3 years, that team we hired over 500 apprentices in 30 occupations, and then had a support staff of, I'm thinking it was upwards of 7 to 10 people just supporting that program alone. So yes, start small, learn from it. There's no reason we can't do, it's a pilot. We piloted 5 and learned from it and then continue to build. I think the next cohort, we had 7. And then it got a little bigger after that. But we can start small. But the key to these programs too is building that cohort model so that you could really understand how to really build and scale and the nuances behind it with the different users. And some of the things that we're doing already. One of the key areas of how we're responding, and here in Ohio, we're seeing a lot of response in the generative AI area. Our lieutenant governor, through the governor's office of workforce transformation, has come out with a playbook for educators on AI because we know that it starts with the educators. But generative AI is the new power skill. And I just completed the design and implementation strategy for a center for the future of work at one of Ohio's first and largest community colleges. And this center is going to be one of the first of its kind in Ohio, addressing those emerging skills with a focus on AI, advanced manufacturing as well, and all the related areas, but also the future work about how we're working and teaching so that we can also remove those social determinants of work. But for the center, knowing that there's a focus on AI, we did a study just in the past year in Ohio alone. AI showed up in over 2,900 job postings across 190 occupations. In Ohio, I like to think, and sometimes is a little bit of a lagger in some of the high-end technology areas. I mean, and we were innovating in AI at IBM, over 10 years ago. But to think about that and to further exacerbate the demand for AI skills, higher education is not ready yet and fully equipped to respond. It takes time to create new curriculum and to get it approved. But we also know that industry can't wait. So we've got this,
Right.
this system that's just out of alignment with each other. But the great news is that there are other industry recognized skills-based training programs that could quickly be adopted. Companies like IBM through their Skills Build program, Google, Intel, there's a numerous, if you Google them out there, are being offered for free right now. So there is a way to get started. And many of those programs can also, work. Our new caller talent community is also helping to support those programs. But I think it's important, and Jim and David, you both started to touch on it. Before diving into skills-based training, everybody wants to do AI training, but it's really important for employers and consumers to understand what skills training is going to add the most value. A lot of time it's like the highway and the system is littered with it's a wild west of training
Yeah.
out there, and that's another fail fast strategy, is just being the wild west. And so if we use AI as an example on skills based transformation, we have actually worked with our new center for the future of work that we've been working with to really understand what it means to build skills-based training in AI, right? We know that we have to start with knowledge-based training, right? What is AI? What are the key concepts? What is the terminology? Helping them understand that this is not a replacement for the human. It is a tool to help them take the minutia out of their job and be more valued and more productive as an employee. But number two, we also have to focus on ethics. And AI is creating a lot of turmoil in the narrative, if you will, and you've seen from legislation that's out there. Ethics is key. So number two in a stackable program, we have to create ethics training as the next stack to how we create an AI educated workforce. And then lastly, it's the practical application in the professions to better understand how to use AI. I like to call this AI in the humanities. At a time where humanities degrees there's an assault on those, I've been hearing from many of the AI leaders across the globe that humanities is the key skill required to really accelerate the advancement in AI. It's going to be the power skill. So
Wasn't the for like the first prompt engineer, isn't she she was a poet, right? That's yeah. So you're right. Yeah.
so
Oh,
really,
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
I've been hearing it consistently. And so really, AI plus humanities, stacking all these skills, stack it with the foundation, the ethics, the practical application in the humanities is really how you start then to stack. And what's important here, though, is the digital badging systems, right? Because these are not degree programs. We need to know who knows AI. We need to validate for skills. And that's where the digital badging systems really come into play, because as we used at Youngstown State University, we were able to stack programs, but we were also able to stack skills. This is the skills in the first one. This is the skills in the second one. So when you complete that, say, certificate program with those three stackable trainings, the digital badging systems, if done well and done right, we'll be able to capture the data and the user-centered outcomes that you set out to achieve.
It is amazing, and it's amazing that we've gotten that to that level, like Jim said, on the superficial level, what we thought badges were about before. But when you think about the college degrees that we received with these macro credentials that weren't broken down at that level, and imagine if they had been or would be, but you're doing it now, and it's necessary. I mean, we all know it's necessary to break down all of these qualifications and skills and capabilities.
But the systems and the expertise are out there doing it, and it's just a matter of tapping into the great expertise that's already out there. I know that we all sit also on the board for Credentials As You Go, which was funded by Lumina Foundation, initially continued funding through the U.S. Department of Education, and creating that pathway and that framework for credentials in the physical world and the digital world, which we are all digital, so it is all digital world now, but is really going to be a critical success factor in making sure that we are doing it well and right, whether you're in higher education, whether you're in industry, whether you're a small manufacturing company sitting in Ohio or a large tech company down in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, the systems and processes are still the same. And the more we can come together in unity on some of these things, is going to really help catalyze all the great work that all of our stakeholders are setting out to do.
Fascinating to think about where we were at just 2 years ago and where we're at today, particularly in the context of how AI is changing things, right? We were having a conversation yesterday, and I talked about how, a year and a half ago, the thought of using generative AI in my day-to-day work, it wasn't even a thought, right? And today, I can't even imagine not having that, right? It's been so transformative in terms of how I think about getting work done. And not just getting work done, but how to improve the work that I'm doing, to improve the output and improve the outcomes. And I think that's really key. That helps keep me honest, so to speak, in not using AI as a crutch, generative AI as a crutch, but to use it to actually help drive higher quality outcomes. And I think that's an important piece as well when we think about AI.
how do we drive innovation and transformation? So I just completed a project with Case Western Reserve University as part of the National Science Foundation's Engines Grants competition. And I was leading the workforce strategy with all the stakeholders in Northeast Ohio, everything from employers, industry associations, colleges, universities, and all the stakeholders. And part of this was helping to inform and educate the local and regional providers on what the national perspective looks like. What are innovators doing across the country? How do we innovate? And we used AI as a tool to really bring all of that collective thinking nationally together to help think for how we want to use that innovation to implement in our own region here. So, I mean, it was really powerful to see the power behind AI as a tool to help us think bigger, think more boldly, and take more bolder actions to the innovation that's needed in the future of workspace.
So where do we go from here? What's your recommendation for people that are watching this as we close on what should they do next? If they want to get involved with your work, or they want to understand more about New Collar, or they want to understand, how to get started on a journey like this?
Don't be afraid to take the first step. There's lots of resources out there. One of the first things that we will do with organizations, it's all of our design thinking methodologies. We'll start with just understanding what are their challenge statements. And again, companies don't need to go at it alone. So understanding the challenge statements, we will help dive into the research and the data. We will help to come up with a concept, and then we will work with all your stakeholders, bringing everybody together. If you have never participated in design thinking workshops, they are magical ways to bring collective users together in a room to innovate for the future of your design for your workforce strategy. But I think the most important thing is companies don't have to tackle it alone. There's great organizations out there that come together that make up this whole system of support to be able to innovate for the future. And a second thing is you don't have to go it alone, and you don't have to do it in a big scale. Start small.
Yeah.
Start in a manageable size that will help prove that create your most valuable product or your most valuable offering at that moment, and test and repeat and continue to refine. And that's how you also build buy-in. I know a lot of our leaders out there continue to have buy-in issues. And I oftentimes think it's not even buy-in issues, it's capacity issues. So again, I think that the collective work that we're all doing in our additional ecosystem, we can help them come up with ways to remove some of those capacity barriers that they're facing right now.
That's terrific. And if they want to get in touch with you directly?
Jennifer.Oddo@newcollartalent.com.
That's
or
fantastic.
LinkedIn. Everyone can find me on LinkedIn as well. So
thank you so much, Jennifer, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us today and share all this great information.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen, for all the great work you continue to do.
Are you looking to launch a digital badging program or improve an existing one? Look no further than Digital Badge Academy. Our highly popular online masterclass will help you gain the skills and insights necessary to achieve success. Enroll now and start learning today.